In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to scale your e-commerce brand profitably in 2025 with email and SMS marketing. Now, this is not going to be some vague overview. This is going to be a full-length course where I'm showing you every single piece of our entire email and SMS marketing system so you can take it and implement it for your brand. And this is the exact system that we use to get results like these. So we helped Habit Nest, which is a wellness-based e-com brand, increase email sales 87% in just 30 days. We almost quadrupled the CBD brand's email revenue, adding about $35K a month. We doubled the training company's email sales in just 30 days, adding about $30,000 a month. We have full-length case studies like this. For this one, for example, where we added $175,000 a month and break down all the results and the creative transformations and everything involved in that process. But first, this is what makes this training different. You can find info about email marketing pretty much wherever you want online right now, but the issue is that the bulk of it is very vague and it's very difficult to actually take action on. The other issue is that the information given is not always based on actual data, and I don't like to make decisions based on what I feel is right, but rather on what the data and logic shows to be right. That's how we win in business. So the difference I'm going to be making here in this course is that this will be an actionable training document, and it's going to help you understand how everything fits into the complete funnel for an e-commerce brand as a whole, rather than just using a templated strategy that doesn't drive results for everybody. So this way you know exactly why everything works, and you can make iterations along the way like an expert would, all from simply taking the time to go through this guide. Now, quick disclaimer, email and SMS marketing is really not that complex. The ones who actually win with it, like the brands that are crushing it with email and SMS, are simply just the ones who do the fundamentals the best, which is an advantage for you because in this training document, you're going to get all the info you need to execute, including all the fundamentals and the action plan to be really good at all of it. Also, you can make more money and get people to buy over and over again from your brand. All right, let's dive right in. So the problem that most e-commerce brands have is that they either treat email and SMS as a side thing, or they just neglect it and just have someone get to it, like whenever they can. I've heard that a million times. But email and SMS is the #1 system for retaining customers and converting them in the first place. So this is a really good example. A large percentage of the traffic that you pay for is not ready to buy right now. So a 3% conversion rate is pretty solid for an e-commerce brand, which means that 97% of your traffic is not going to buy yet. It's going to take them a little while to get to know the brand and get to know the customers. And the strength of your email and SMS operations is what decides how much of that 97% you capture onto your list and convert in the future. On top of that, it's also a crucial factor, along with obviously the quality of your product, in getting people to buy again and again and again. So here's what the typical sales funnel looks like for brands that neglect email and SMS. They just have a basic funnel like this, and this is exactly where they're missing out on hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue. What you need instead is this comprehensive system that captures and converts that traffic through strategic email flows and campaigns. Now, allow me to walk you through exactly how this actually works. So before we get into all the exciting stuff, we actually have to make sure that your emails deliver to your recipients. And that is done with A+ deliverability. So let's dive into that next. So I could give you every tip, tactic, strategy in the book, but the truth here with deliverability is that your content isn't being delivered to your audience. All of your efforts in email and SMS are going to go to waste. So it's very, very crucial that you have deliverability out of the way, taken care of, and just in the back of your mind so you can just focus on what actually matters, which is the quality of your content. And of course, more importantly, converting non-buyers into repeat customers who spend a lot of money with your brand over time. Now, first of all, deliverability is essentially just how well or how frequently you land in your recipient's inbox or primary tab. And if you don't perfect it, you're literally leaving thousands of dollars on the table every single month from your emails just landing in spam and promotions. So the tips, strategies, and principles that you're about to find in this training are very, very boring. They're not, this part is not exciting, to be honest with you, but they do work. And if you want your email marketing to make you a lot of money this year and you don't want all of your email marketing efforts to be wasted, you must follow this protocol, because email marketing does nothing if the emails don't get sent. So if your deliverability practices are done perfectly well, just like this guide teaches, then you'll be able to trust that you're always landing in your subscribers' inboxes, and your revenue will reflect that. But if you ignore this and your deliverability practices are poor, then you're going to obviously wonder why your email marketing doesn't work and your revenue will suffer. All right, step one of deliverability is the domain setup. So you're gonna wanna make sure that you get these 3 records added to your sending domain. You have a DMARC record, an SPF record, and a DKIM record. Now, if you wanna pause the video here, there's a quick explanation of what each record's purpose is, but you don't actually have to care about this. You just need to know that each of them is very important, and you need all 3 of them set up if you wanna have good deliverability. So do not start sending emails without these. If you check and you don't have them right now, then go back and make sure that these are set up. Now, it's very easy to get them set up. I'm going to leave the links to this document that I'm going through right here in the description of this video. But you can go here, or you can even just check these sites just from what you're seeing on the screen here. There's a website here that can automatically generate a DMARC record for you. There's a site here that can automatically generate an SPF record, and one here for DKIM. Again, you're going to generate these records, and you're going to add them to your domain DNS records as a new record. All 3 of these will be a separate record. And keep in mind with DMARC, you can only have one DMARC record. So if you already have one, make sure of that, because you don't want to have to repeat it, because that will just break things. Now, if anything doesn't seem right here, just make a quick Google search or ask ChatGPT something like this. Prompt: below I pasted the type, host name, and value of my DMARC, SPF, and DKIM records for my domain, which I will be sending bulk emails from. Analyze these and tell me what I might have wrong or what I need to change. If you need more context on anything, please ask me for it. When you're using ChatGPT to solve problems like this, you want to be as specific as you can and what you actually want it to do. So tell it exactly what you want, just like I did in that prompt. All right, number 2 for deliverability is the proper account setup. So this is very simple. It's just about getting your dedicated sending domain set up and running in Klaviyo. So you're going to go to your Klaviyo account. You're going to hit that profile button in the bottom left corner. Go to settings, and you're going to go to the email button and then hit domains. All right, there you're going to see an option for a dedicated sending domain. From there, you're just going to want to select your domain hosting platform. Klaviyo will then generate the DNS records for you, and then once it gives you those, you're going to add those into your DNS records just like you did for the DMARC, SPF, and DKIM records. And then once you've added them, you're going to go back to Klaviyo to that exact same spot in the settings, and you're going to click verify. Sometimes it'll take 24 to 48 hours, but truthfully, it usually does it almost right away. So if there are any issues, just double check your records and make sure that they're all looking correct. And again, you can ask ChatGPT for details if you ever need to. All right, next part of the proper domain and account setup is warming up the domain. So if you've been sending consistently to your list for at least 30 days, you can skip this step. But if you're working from a fresh account, it's very important to warm things up rather than just sending to everybody on your list all at once. So for a typical list size, we usually start with only sending to about 1/8 of the list. Then we'll go to 1/5 of the list with the next campaign, then 1/4 of the list with the next campaign. Then we'll probably send like a 30-day engage segment. So like all the people that have opened the other emails. That way you're going to get higher metrics on that engage segment campaign. And then you want to slowly move your way up to a 1/3 of the list send, half the list, 3/4 of the list, and then eventually the whole list. By now you can see who's actually engaging, and you can send to those engaged segments from there. And then eventually after about 30 days or so, you will not have to worry about that anymore if you send consistently like 2 to 4 times a week. All right, number 2 for deliverability is email list hygiene. Now again, this is a pretty simple principle, but the main key here is this. You want as much of your total email list as possible to be engaging with your emails. And preferably many of them are buyers of your brand. So if you have 250,000 active subscribers on your email list and only 30 to 50,000 are actually engaged with the emails, your list is filled with garbage subscribers, filled with them. Now, in order to clean these people out of your list, you're going to want to set up a sunset unengaged flow. I told you at the beginning this is going to be super actionable. I was not lying. So here's exactly how you set that up. You're going to create a segment in your Klaviyo account of people that haven't engaged with any emails in the last 60 to 90 days, assuming you send emails somewhat regularly. So right here, you can see an example of what your sunset unengaged segment might look like. Again, you can play around with the numbers there. And this point right here, this point here, and this point here are all things you can consider for the way you can tweak those numbers in that segment. So if you want to pause here and look at those, feel free to do that. Next, you're going to want to create a flow that is triggered when people join that sunset unengaged segment. And then in the flow, you'll just create 2 emails that are offering them a discount to join the brand again, and have the last email ask them if they still want emails from you. And then of course, you're just going to add like a 1-day time delay in between each of those emails. Now, if they open the email or click the email, any of the emails in this flow, have them leave the flow by using profile filters in the trigger of the flow in Klaviyo. So to be clear on that, you're going to click on the trigger in Klaviyo, you're going to click profile filters, you're going to say if they've opened any email in that flow at least once, since starting the flow, they get kicked out of the flow essentially. And then do that same thing for if they click the emails. And then this is really important. At the end of this flow, you're going to add an update profile property block with the Klaviyo editor, and then label those people as engaged if they reach the end of the flow. That way, as you can see, they get put into this flow when they're unengaged. If they don't engage, they get to the end and then they're marked unengaged officially. But if they do engage, they just get kicked out of the flow. And then you simply create another segment of those people that were marked unengaged. And then at the end of every month, you're essentially just going to go in and suppress those people off your list. All right, big number 3 for deliverability is clean sending practices. So this part simply just comes down to segmentation. So 90% of the ecom brands that I audit send one email to their whole list on a weekly basis with no regard whatsoever for who receives that email. This is the complete wrong way to do it. So by segmenting out each email that you send, you can specifically target different groups of your list based on their behavior, habits, engagement history, buying history, etc. And this therefore leads to higher open rates, higher click rates, and ultimately just higher overall conversions. And not only does it immediately make you more money since you're sending more targeted emails, it also gives you a better sending reputation in the eyes of Google, Outlook, Yahoo, etc., since people engage with your emails more. So you can't actually see what your sender reputation is, but all these email platforms have that assigned to you behind the scenes. And again, you can't find out what it is, but it's there. And that's what determines if you're going to land in primary, promotions, or spam. On an extremely basic level, these are some of the basic segmentation filters that you might want to try out using. Now, ideally, you want your open rates to always stay above a 40% average. And your click rates, you want to stay above about a 1% average, but that's not going to impact your deliverability as much as your open rate. And you also want to be pushing for replies whenever you can. So very few brands actually do this, but if at the bottom of your emails, if you just put some type of mention or shout out to get people to reply, people will reply. We've seen a lot of it. Now, keep in mind, replies are super valuable for boosting your sender reputation. So it's really easy to throw in. That's why we do it. All right, last piece, number 4 to email deliverability is leveraging text to image ratio or just optimizing your content overall. So you always want to have more text in your emails than images, and you want the text blocks to outweigh the images. But it's not what you think, because we still use pretty much image-full emails, and I'm going to explain how we do that. So as an e-commerce brand, you probably want really cool looking emails to send out that are full of images, obviously. So what we do at Rame Copy is that we leverage something called the primary tab footer, which essentially allows us to load an email up with images and GIFs and still land in the primary tab 90% of the time. So essentially the primary tab footer contains a block of about 400 words of text, which helps improve the text to image ratio in your emails. And that text to image ratio improves the promotional percentage, which is, I don't know where that term was coined, but I heard it and I thought it was pretty interesting. The promotional percentage is kind of like what the email platforms see when they get your email. So if it's super promotional, meaning it's super image heavy, you're going to promotions. But if they see a big block of text of like 400, 500 words, and that outweighs the images and the GIFs in the email, then your promotional percentage is a lot lower. So to set this primary tab footer up, I have another video on the channel that's about 10 minutes long, just showing you the exact step-by-step process of doing it. You can check that out. Now, I want to quickly tell you how to easily and smoothly implement this deliverability training without facing operational issues. So as you can see here, you have 3 choices now. You could either take everything I just told you about deliverability and not implement it. You could kind of like sort of implement it, or you could fully implement it. Now, neither of those are going to get you the result you want unless you fully implement it. So when it comes down to the proper domain and account setup, these things are very simple setups and they will not take you long. So once they're done, you can just completely ignore them. If you have a website guy who manages your DNS records and domain stuff, you can either have him or her just do all this, or you can just generate the records and send them to him/her, just take care of it. For the email list hygiene, the sunset unengaged flow is, again, a pretty simple one-time setup other than just getting like the copy written for it. And then all you need other than that is to set a reminder for the end of every month to go through and suppress the people in that suppression segment. Now for clean sending practices, if you develop email content with prepared email briefs, you're going to want to add a section to the brief for segmentation. And then obviously be very conscious of what segment each email is going to be sent to. Now, if you don't use email briefs, that's still fine. Just be sure to send to a 15 to 30 day engaged segment at least once out of every 3 to 5 emails that you send out. Just remember that you want your open rates to stay above 40% and you want your click rates to be above at least like 0.7%. And then when it comes to optimizing your email content for deliverability, again, the primary tab footer is just another one-time setup. From there, you can simply drag and drop it into every email you ever send out. To do that, you're just gonna want to hit that little star button in the Klaviyo template builder. That'll mark it as I forget what it's called. It's a block that stays there always. I think it's a global block. You can drag that into every email. Now, the other aspect of this is just being conscious of using plain text blocks or plain text emails whenever you can. So you can incorporate a plain text block into a design section if that row of space is nothing but text. And if you need to change the background color to text color and the text color to blend it in with the design, you can do that too. And again, use plain text emails. Those crush for us. All right, so now that your deliverability is nailed down, let's get into the list growth so that your email list is constantly just being filled up with new subscribers on a regular basis. So the first thing you want to understand here is that a very small percentage of people are going to buy now and a large percentage of people will buy later. This is just the reality of e-commerce, and it's that only a small percentage of people are going to buy right away. It's just how things work. It's the facts. It's like gravity. There's no point in fighting. Now, there are a lot of people who will never buy from you at all. And there's also a large percentage of people who have a likelihood of buying at some point in the future. So just picture this with me as 3 different groups of leads. Group 1 are those who buy right away upon learning about you. Group 2, they'll never buy. And Group 3, these people will buy at some point in the future. Our goal is to turn all of Group 3 or as many of them as possible into buyers. Now, as I mentioned earlier, a typical ecom store conversion rate sits around 2 to 3%. That means 97 and 98% of visitors hang in the balance, so we want to market to as many of them as we possibly can. Now, how do we market to as many of them as possible? We do that by capturing them onto our email list. How do we do that? By increasing the conversion rate of our opt-in funnel. So let's get into that. So as you can see here, all traffic sources go to your website, and then that goes to your opt-in, and then that brings people to your email and SMS list. Your opt-in form is essentially your way of growing the email list consistently and predictably, but most people do not put much thought or energy into it, which is a massive mistake because this is what fuels the entire email and SMS strategy that we're sitting here talking about today. An effective opt-in form will take your traffic, convert about 7 to 10% of them onto your email list by incentivizing them with a lead magnet. The best way to think about a lead magnet is as a bribe. So you're effectively bribing people in exchange for their contact information. Now let's get into some of the exact strategies and principles to utilize in your opt-in form, but keep in mind, it's important to understand the math behind the importance of the form. So let's say you bring 20,000 visitors to your website every 30 days. If your opt-in form only converts 4% of those people, you're bringing 800 new people onto your list every month. But if you just make some key changes that you learned in this guide that I'm about to tell you about, and get the opt-in form to an 8% conversion rate, now you're bringing 1,600 people to the list every month, and you've essentially doubled the production and value of your email and SMS efforts, all because of some small tweaks to your opt-in form. So as you can see, it's extremely high leverage to fix your opt-in form. So here's a basic look at the opt-in funnel and how it actually works. Keep in mind that people will be viewing your opt-in form in a certain order, so it's important that you understand this concept. I'm describing it as a funnel here, but it's really just steps. The typical structure you use here is a teaser, an email opt-in, an SMS opt-in, and then a success page. Now there are a ton of elements that you can test in any opt-in form, so just know going in that you should just get your best attempt up and running to start, and then you want to test your way to an 8 to 10% conversion rate from there. But there are different goals of each step in this funnel, and they all have different purposes. All right, so step 1 is the teaser. The teaser is very simple. It should be anywhere from just about 2 to 5 words, and it should simply just tease the offer. It's there for 2 reasons. Number 1, to pique the curiosity of someone who already closed the form and wants another chance to go back in and get that offer again later on in their shopping experience. Or number 2, which is to allow people who accidentally closed the form to be able to go back and get to it again. So as you can tell, it's not complicated. Here's an example right here of one that we might use as a circular teaser. And just for context, this is a teaser that was used on a form that produced about $100,000 a month. All right, step number 2 is the email opt-in. There are 3 elements to this opt-in: the offer, the copy, and the design. So first for the offer, your offer is the same as the lead magnet in this scenario. So You can think of it as your bribe for their contact information like I mentioned before. All you can really do here is pick something you're okay with giving away or offering and then test different variations to see what performs the best. However, you might ask me, if the delivery of the lead magnet happens in the welcome series after the person opts in, how do you test the offer? Don't you need 2 different welcome series? And the answer is yes, you do need 2 different welcome series. Here's how you do that. So of course you have your opt-in form. You have variant A of your opt-in form with offer A, and then you have variant B with offer B. So variant A is going to submit to list A, and then list A is going to trigger welcome series A, where that offer is embedded. And then same thing for B. B is going to submit to a different list, which triggers a different welcome series. Now for the opt-in copy, your copy here should quite literally be as concise as possible while still making the offer attractive and clear. It's really important to remember here that you are interrupting them. So they should be able to read this form extremely quickly, and your headline should be extremely clear and easy to read. Now, your subheadline should clearly state what they need to do, and it should tell them to enter their email address so you can send the code or the free PDF or the guide or whatever it is that you're selling here. Other than this, the only other copy is the button and the no button. Now the button is pretty obvious. It should always say submit or get 10% off or whatever it is. Do not put continue, because then it kind of tells them that there's more steps they have to take. But your no text should say something like, no thanks, I'll pay full price, or something that makes them feel like they're going to be missing out by clicking off. You almost want to make it sound like passive aggressive, but not actually. Now for the opt-in design, pretty simple. The design of your opt-in is not super important in our experience, but it should be on brand. It should be very clean. Like for context, we've seen a lot of opt-ins where having an image actually performs worse than not having an image. And by clean, I mean it should be super easy on the eyes and super easy to digest. Like I said, very minimal amounts of copy, basically just like a normal layout with a button, and it's all just very clean and nice and pleasurable for the eyes to look at. All right, opt-in step number 3 is the SMS opt-in. Now, you do not want to bait and switch the viewer and make them sign up to SMS in order to get the offer that you said they would get by entering the email. I see some brands do this, and I'm sure they have success with it, but with our agency and with our clients that we work with, we've realized that just kind of breaks trust, and we tend not to ever do it. But your SMS offer should essentially just be an upgrade to the original offer that they already claimed. So if you're giving them 10% off the email opt-in, you might want to throw in an extra 5% off to make it 15% off at the SMS opt-in. If you don't want to upgrade that offer, you can just say they will get exclusive deals and offers if they join the text group. And then in the future, when you have like a sale, you can just give them early access. But overall, picture the SMS opt-in exactly like the email opt-in in terms of copy and design, and probably even the offer as well. All right, so step number 4 here is the success page. So you got them to opt in, you won, let's go. All you have to do now is essentially just point them in the right direction. So your success page should either tell them to check their email inbox or check their text if you have an SMS opt-in form, of course. And pro tip here, you want to add a keep browsing button, which pushes them to your collections page. So that's a really easy way to move them on to the next step of your sales funnel. Now I want to give you some opt-in swipes that my team has created so that you can take these for inspiration. Here we have one for an electric bike brand. This form right here for a self-help journals brand actually converted at about 13%. This one has the company name squiggled out for privacy, but again, this one converted near 10%. Here's one for a meal prep company. Again, super clean. Here's the one for that same meal prep company that we split tested. And here's an example for a CBD company. Now, for testing your opt-in form, there are 5 overall aspects that you're going to want to focus on. And that is offer, copy, design, sequence, and then the targeting. Now, honorable mention to timing. I usually kind of factor in timing to the targeting and rules, but oftentimes nowadays we actually just test timing first before we even test the offer. But in most scenarios, the absolute most important aspect to nail down is the offer. So historically, that's the first thing we used to test after doing the timing, how we've kind of like adapted it. But then everything else should come after timing and offer. Now, here are some potential tests that you could run on each of the 5 opt-in aspects that I already listed. So for the offer, you could do 10% off versus a dollar amount off that's equal to 10% of your average order value. You could also do 10% off versus 15% off, and then see if that extra 5% is worth the extra number of opt-ins by just financially modeling that out. You can do a percentage off versus like a free PDF or resource or guide, which is obviously much more favorable for you. Now for the copy, you can test aggressive versus less aggressive, subheader versus no subheader at all, more detailed headline versus just like a 3 to 5 word headline. Design is actually a pretty high leverage test. You can test dark versus light layout, image versus no image, bright colors versus black and white. And then for the sequence, you can test adding an extra question step to the beginning that looks something like this one right here. A lot of people will call this a micro commitment. And then as far as timing, targeting rules, whatever you want to call it, we'll usually go with an 8-second time delay versus 30-second time delay test. In most cases, we see that 8-second wins that, but there have been some scenarios where 30-second wins. That usually just comes down to the type of products that are being sold and how long people like to be on the site before actually getting that offer. All right, now we are getting into the juicy stuff. We are at campaigns. So again, taking a look at that full funnel, you can see the important role that campaigns play. So campaign emails and SMS have many functions. They can deliver valuable evergreen content with a soft pitch at the end. They can announce product launches. They can be used to distribute one-time sales or promo content. They can be used to celebrate holidays. You kind of get the idea. But ultimately, the goal of your campaigns is to stay in front of your audience consistently and continue increasing their lifetime value. The bottom line here is that people are not always going to be in your flows. However, they could always be receiving your campaign emails. So when it comes down to building a campaign strategy, it comes down to many factors, but there are 5 key things that you want to decide and test over time. And that's going to be your sending volume, the number of plain text emails that you're sending versus design emails, segmentation, value content versus promotional content, and then SMS volume. And then you're going to decide the outcomes of those 5 categories by things like how often people typically buy your products, the end goal for your customers, like is it subscribe and save, is it just to like have the single purchase, whatever it is, the actual problem that your brand's products solve, the number of products that you actually have. All these things are super important into your overall campaign strategy. So starting off with sending volume is something you should just test your way into. However, the more content that you can send out on a weekly basis without unnecessarily churning through your list, the better. The industry standard for us is kind of just to start with about 2 to 3 emails per week and just see how those perform. If you're getting at least a 40% average on open rates and a 0.7 to 1% average on click rates, then you should definitely increase that to 4 emails per week. And then as long as your metrics look good, you can increase that up another notch. But if your open rates are super low and clicks are draining, then it might be best to scale down or take a closer look at the segmentation. But do not get caught making an emotional decision here and scaling down the amount of campaigns you're sending just because you're worried about making people mad. If the metrics look good, then there's absolutely no reason to scale down your volume, always. But there is an important caveat here. This is all assuming that your deliverability is on point. If your metrics are suffering, it could very possibly be due to either your list quality, who you're sending to, or your deliverability. For example, if your list is filled with subscribers that you haven't sent content to in a very long time, and they've forgotten about you, your list quality might be complete garbage. And if you're sending emails to your entire list, which is just a bunch of unengaged people, instead of a segment of people who have engaged with your content in the last 30 days, then your metrics will also suffer. Lastly, if your domain does not have the proper DNS record set up, your email content is not optimized for deliverability, your sending reputation is poor, and you haven't cleaned out your list in forever, then you likely have a big deliverability problem, and you should go ahead and solve that before you start worrying about the content. All right, next is plain text versus design emails. So there are 3 different types of emails that we leverage in our agency, and that is plain text, design, and plain text hybrid. Now, obviously, plain text emails are just text with 0 images, and design emails are full of cool graphics and buttons and headlines. But plain text hybrid emails are just plain text emails with some type of design element included in one way or another. Now, the rate at which you should use plain text emails versus design emails depends on how acute the pain point is that your products solve. So if you sell a hair growth supplement, the product solves a specific problem for the user, meaning it needs a lot of high-level copy in order to sell it. Think about it like this. Nobody is pulling money out of their wallet to buy a supplement just because of how cool the picture of it was. But on the other hand, if you sell something like t-shirts or watch straps or any like visual product like that, these items do not solve a specific pain point. They're visual products that are meant to be aesthetically pleasing. So this means that they are better sold in a well-designed format rather than a text-heavy format. A long, drawn-out sales letter about the quality of a Rick and Morty t-shirt, for example, is not what's going to sell it. So keep that information in mind when you're deciding how much plain text content you should use versus design content. Just do not fall into the trap of thinking that you need to pick one or the other. You can always absolutely use both, and it's also extremely effective to use both. But the direction you lean in terms of plain text or design just kind of depends on the essence of your products. Now, segmentation is a huge issue that I've seen a lot of brands make, and it requires a little bit more depth So the following page is going to be entirely about segmentation. Next, for value content versus promotional content, the volume of your content that is value-based depends, again, heavily on the essence of your brand. So if you sell something like t-shirts, your content will be mostly promotional, but you can still do it in a fun and engaging way. If you sell something like supplements, there are many things you could talk about that would provide a lot more value to your audience. So in that scenario, it's going to be a lot easier to fuel a bunch of value content in. Last thing here is SMS volume. So just like campaign email volume, this is something you just kind of like test into. We'll usually do about 1 or 2 weeks sometimes, and then we'll just, based on the numbers, we'll fluctuate it. All right, so as promised, we're going to talk about segmentation. So segmentation is a very important practice in email marketing because it helps you get a more targeted message, which to more targeted people, which will help convert better. It leads to higher open rates and click rates, which increases sending reputation, which increases deliverability. It also allows you to send more frequently, thus giving yourself more chances to find angles that hit and make more money without giving people more content that they would like and making them churn. So there are a million different segments you could use, but below I'm going to simply include a bulleted list of segments that you should consider using. After this section, I'll do an example campaign strategy for an example brand so you can see how I would utilize these segments. Now with each of these, you can always pause the video and look at the actual segment definitions, but you got engaged all time. So this is basically like your entire list. You've got a certain number of days engaged segment. You've got a segment of people that have bought in a certain time frame. You can do a segment of people that have purchased in a certain time frame but are also engaged. You can do all-time buyers with a certain time frame of engagement. You can do non-buyers with a certain time frame of engagement. And then of course you have to have your basic non-buyer segment. So now let's walk through an example campaign strategy. So for this example, we're going to act like we are a pet supplement brand that primarily helps dog owners relieve their dogs of joint pain so that they can move around like they're a young puppy again. All right, so we got 2 different products for this store. So I want you to picture this like I'm sitting here like planning this out in front of you. We're going to try to get away with sending about 4 to 6 emails per week here. We're going to send mostly plain text emails due to the fact that our products solve in a specific pain point, and to sell them, it's going to take like some emotional triggers to be pulled, and that can only be done through really good copy. I really just don't think heavy design will do much for us here. Now for the segmentation, we're going to mail non-buyers 1 to 2 times per week. That's going to all be plain text or a plain text hybrid style. We're going to mail to our 90-day repeat buyers 1 time a week. We'll mail 90-day repeat buyers 1 time per week and try and just essentially push them to our subscribe and save membership. These could be about half and half plain text and design, but probably more design since they've already tried the product. We just need to clearly display the benefits of subscribe and save. So like right there, you can kind of see the mindset behind when you use certain types of content. Then we'll mail value-based content with softer, more subtle, yet well-placed call to actions to varying levels of engaged segments 2 to 3 times per week. That's going to be probably mostly plain text hybrid. And then on Fridays, we'll do a pet highlight sent in by customers, which will be a design email highlighting a success story from one of our products. Now for this brand, due to the fact that it solves a very specific pain point and it lives in a large world of possible angles, which is pets, we're going to give a fair share of valuable content. But we still are going to sell in that valuable content. It'll just be more subtle and strategic rather than a full direct response email. If we were to be selling t-shirts or something, there's not really much value to be given here. It would be more so just like engaging content. So instead you kind of have to go with content that's more entertaining or plays off trends and just kind of like weave the products into that in different ways. For our SMS volume, we're going to send 3 SMS per week, 1 to non-buyers, 1 to repeat buyers about subscribe and save, and then 1 to a general engaged segment. All right, let's get into the KPIs and benchmarks for campaign emails. So it's absolutely crucial that you're hitting your benchmarks in terms of numbers, and the reason is because if you let your metrics slip, you're going to mess up your sender reputation, and even worse, you'll just stop tweaking your content to meet whatever hits the best with your audience. And that can of course lead to a devastating blow to your overall email and SMS performance. So here are the KPIs or benchmarks that you should shoot for every metric. Open rate, we want to see at least a 40% on average open rate. Click rate, we kind of look for anywhere from like 0.7 to 1% on average. Revenue is going to be 100% dependent to your store and your products. Like whatever your average order value is, there's a wide range there. So whatever that is, you're going to have to kind of like judge this based on historical data that your brand has had. Your delivery rate should always be like 99.7% or just like an extremely high percentage like that. Bounce rate should be near 0. So like any emails that are bouncing any more than a singular time should always be suppressed. And unsubscribe rate, if you can keep this under 0.3 to 0.5%, then you're in a great spot. but it'll naturally rise if you send more volume most likely. However, quick note, my take on unsubscribe rates, which I've adopted from people much smarter than me, is that if they're unsubscribing, then they probably weren't going to buy anyways. It's not a loss to us if more people are unsubscribing due to us sending more volume. The reason is because I'd rather send more often to the people that will buy from us if it means I'm going to lose some of the people who are never going to buy from us anyways. It's an obvious trade. Now, I threw in some campaign examples and some visuals here just so that you could take a look at the type of content we've produced. Okay, next up, we got the email flows. All right, so super important place to start here is the funnel mindset, because there has been an epidemic that's been going on ever since Chase Diamond released his email and SMS marketing course for ecom brands, and that is templated email flows. Essentially, people are taking a base template, slapping it on their brand, and calling it a day. Do not do that for obvious reasons. It lacks all personalization to the brand, the audience, and the results will absolutely suffer. Instead, you want to be taking into account the goal of each singular flow within the overall funnel. And as a quick reminder, here's what your overall sales funnel looks like. As you can obviously see, each flow plays into it a little bit differently. So as you write, design, and build each of the flows that I'm about to tell you about, you should take into account what that flow is actually for, and then every word or element of that flow should be created with that goal in mind. For example, the purpose of the welcome series is to turn people into first-time buyers. If your primary focus while creating it is to make it look pretty, it will not perform well. Another example is that the first-time buyers series has a purpose of turning the people into repeat buyers. So you want to write it and design it with that in mind. Now, in the sections below, I may give you recommendations on how you could structure each flow in terms of content. But that does not mean to just take that and run with it. It is merely a recommendation so you can see an example of what can work. If anything, I recommend you consider your brand, products, and audience and tweak each of them to what might make more sense. Because the truth here is that each of these flows can vary very greatly based on your brand, what problems your products solve, how direct response the brand is, how branded the brand is, any type of variable like that. And you can kind of take those same 5 aspects from the campaign strategy into account here as well. All right, so without further ado, let's get into the sauce. So starting off with the welcome flow, this is an extremely crucial flow to nail. Now the goal here is to introduce people to your brand, what you do, how you can help them, how you've helped others, and ultimately turn them into buyers as soon as you can. Now here's a nice structure that you can start with as an example. Feel free to pause the video here and read through this or take a screenshot. And then here are some example email structures that we'd take in this flow. Now the information here is very tactical and easy to get started with, but if you want a more in-depth breakdown on the welcome series in depth, I have other videos on the channel you can check out. Now let's get into abandonment flows. So here's an example flowchart of how abandonment flows can lead prospects from cold traffic to a sale when they are done the right way. So as you can see here at the top, the prospect enters your website. Now, if they don't see a clear offer or value proposition, they're going to leave the site, and then they'll enter your site abandonment flow. The goal of that flow is to move them back into checking out some products. Now, if while checking out products, the products seem to be too expensive or just the value isn't there, then they're going to leave at the product level and enter our browse abandonment flow. And then we push them back to add that product to their cart. And now they might just be shopping some other options to find a better price. So then they abandon their cart and get our abandoned cart flow. So then that pushes them to continue onto the checkout page, but then they don't like the shipping fees and the shipping time. So then we handle those objections once again in the abandoned checkout flow, and then eventually they place an order. Now let's dive into the specifics of each of these 4 flows. So the goal of your site abandonment flow is to take the people who just visited the site without looking at any product specifically to actually browse some items and make a buying decision. Here's a great structure that you can start with if you want to screenshot this. And here are some example emails that we've put together. Now keep in mind in this site abandonment flow, you kind of just want to collect data and see what type of product people are clicking on, because these people are very low intent compared to people that are at the abandoned cart or checkout level. All right, now for the browse abandonment flow, your goal with this flow is to turn the people who are just checking a product out into buyers. Here's a great structure you can start with here. And here are some examples of some decent browse abandonment emails as well. Now with abandoned cart, your goal of this flow is to recover the orders of people who added items to their cart but never actually got to checkout. Once again, here's another structure that you can start with. And here are a couple example emails, and as you can see, we got some dynamic product blocks in there as well. All right, now for the abandoned checkout flow. Your goal here is to get the people who leave your site while at the checkout stage to go ahead and make that purchase. And once again, here's another good structure that you can start with. All right, now we're moving into the post-purchase side of things. And we are beginning with the first-time buyer series. Now, the core goal of this flow is to remove all buyer's remorse and get them to make their second purchase. Now, I put if applicable here because for some stores, they don't even want someone to make a second purchase because, like they sell a product that it's just like a one-time use. So in that case, your whole strategy here might be to get people to refer their friends and family. It could be totally different. All right, now here's a quick look at that structure example if you want to go ahead and steal that. The next flow in the post-purchase journey that you need to be running is the repeat buyer series. And the goal here is simply to remove buyer's remorse and most importantly, prime them to come back again in the near future. Keep in mind that at this point, they've proven that they really like your products because they've already purchased more than once. So again, we just want to remove that buyer's remorse, reinforce that decision for them, and prime them to keep buying again from our campaign emails that they will continuously be receiving. And here's a nice structure that you can start out with. Next up is the VIP flow. So your goal here is to give your very best customers exclusive perks or benefits and essentially notify them that they will get early access to sales and promos. And here's a nice structure that you can get started with here. Next up is the customer win-back flow. So this is going to be where you're going to want to recover the business of a customer who has not purchased from you in a significant amount of time. Now that amount of time will be different based on the products that you sell. So if you sell a product where you expect them to repurchase every 30 days, then if they don't buy for 60 to 90 days, that's where they're going to enter this flow. But if you sell a product where they don't need to purchase again for like 6 months, it might be like 8, 9, 12 months before you have them enter this flow. And here's a nice structure that you can start out with. All right, next up for the sunset unengaged flow. Your goal here is simply to clean your list on autopilot for deliverability and to lower your Klaviyo bill. Now, I mentioned earlier in this video how to build this out, but we're going to go into a little bit more detail here. So first, you're going to want to build a segment with a definition similar to this. Now, as mentioned earlier, there's a few different variables where you can play around with these numbers based on your products. Just do whatever is best for your store and also your email sending habits. Here's a quick structure of email 1 and 2. We typically only keep this to 2 or 3 emails. Now, for the setup of the sunset unengaged flow, again, you want as much of your email list as possible to be engaging with your emails. And preferably, many of them are buyers of your brand. So if you have 250,000 active subscribers in your email list and only 30 to 50,000 actually engage, your list is filled with garbage subscribers. So to clean those people out of your list, you need to set up a sunset unengaged flow. And then essentially you're going to build out the flow where the flow is triggered when people join that segment. And I already showed you the structure for the 2 emails that you can include. But the other important piece here is that in that trigger block in Klaviyo, you're going to click on that and add profile filters so that and you're going to want to set 2 filters. If they open the email or if they click the email, they leave the flow. And then at the end of this flow, you're going to add an update profile property block and mark those people as unengaged. Then at the end of the month, you simply go into your segment. Again, you're going to create another segment for the people that are marked with the profile property unengaged. And then at the end of every month, you set a reminder for yourself. You go in and just suppress those people in a few clicks. Now you're no longer setting to unengaged people that have been vetted, and your Klaviyo bill is a little bit lower every month. Okay, this is probably the best part of the whole course, and this is the actual creatives. Now, the truth behind the creatives is that this is where all the results actually come from. You could have the best strategy in the world, but if your actual content is garbage, you're going to have a really hard time making things happen. However, do not let that discourage you because it should actually motivate you, because that means you can get an easy leg up on all of your competition simply by implementing what's in this section of the training and getting better at these skills. The 2 skills I'm talking about is copywriting and design. Now, you probably already have someone on your team who takes care of these things, or maybe it's just you, but either way, this section of the training will be crucial to your brand's success, so pay attention. But keep in mind, these are skills, which means they need to be sharpened over time. Every single one of us on earth is working, or at least should be working, to increase our skill level at any given time in whatever it is that we're trying to improve. So first up is email copywriting. Here's our workflow. So within our agency, we start with an account manager, then the brief moves on to a copywriter, which moves back to the account manager to check it. That then goes to a designer to design the emails, which then goes back to the account manager to check it, which then gets sent to the Klaviyo tech to build it all out in Klaviyo. And then actually the account manager checks it again, and then it gets sent and scheduled. It's very important when you're doing all this to follow like a very organized workflow like this, because that way you find any issues before they actually turn into issues, and you can catch everything really easily. Now, in your case, you might not have as many people on board to essentially handle each step of the workflow that I just laid out for you. So instead, you would simply go from copywriter to designer to Klaviyo. If those are all the same person, great. It'll just be more work for that person. But this is probably the only section of this document that will speak on anything other than copy. Now, I had to include this, but locking in is actually extremely important for writing copy. I'm not usually one for the woo-woo mindset stuff, but this is really important because writing copy is very hard if you aren't in a very focused state. Now, right now, I have to say this, AI is a massive piece of writing copy, especially in email marketing. But again, you're not going to use AI properly unless you're still a really good copywriter. I could create a whole nother video, and I'm going to very soon, on the details of how you can use AI in e-commerce email marketing, but it's kind of like out of scope for this training. Right now, I just want you to focus on getting as good as you can at understanding these principles so that when you're using AI to help you out, you can still implement these, because AI is only as good as the copywriter that's using it. So, like I said before, writing copy is super hard if you're not in a focused state, and with how much we all crave dopamine, it can be tough to sit down and get some great copy written. So this is a nice deep work formula that I got from actually a really high level mentor of mine, and it makes locking in for copywriting or any work extremely easy. So that is, have a large bottle of ice water right next to you. You just want to keep drinking that and refilling it. You're going to wear a hoodie with the hood up, have the room as dark as possible, and have a fan on. Wear headphones and play the same song on repeat. You might need to turn it off while writing the actual copy. Set a timer for 60 minutes and take a 10 to 15 minute break after each hour-long work period, and then have a set order of tasks to do before you start. Now, again, I know this is not for everyone, but I had to throw it in because it was super helpful for me. If you like to work this way, go ahead and try it. Now, for customer and market research, this is a massive piece of the puzzle, and it's what's going to guide all the copy you write, not just for your emails, but for your ads and everything for your brand. So I actually made another YouTube video that you can check out here on the channel. We'll probably drop it in the description as well. That YouTube video goes through our whole AI market research process that uses your reviews, your competitors' reviews, Amazon reviews, Reddit posts, online forums, whatever it is. We use all that stuff, and we just gather a ton of data from the market. That way we can use all of it when we're writing our copy. Because the biggest difference between like an average mediocre copywriter and the best copywriters is the level of research and knowledge that they have on the market. So as you can see here, this is a copywriter standing next to a wall that's stopping that copywriter from being great. And then we got the Super Street Fighter character shooting this freaking fireball and breaking up the wall. That fireball is the market research. Now, like I mentioned, I was literally getting coaching from a 8-figure copywriter. I asked him, what's the number one thing that separates the mediocre copywriters from the best of the best? And he said the difference was research. So do not skimp out on your market research. Do it and genuinely use it. And you should want to do it because it'll give you all the tools you need to write copy, and it makes it super easy. All right, next, we're going to get into the 3 types of email formats. As mentioned earlier, you've got plain text emails, design emails, and plain text hybrid emails. First up is plain text. So this is an email with nothing but text, no images, graphics, design buttons. The CTA is hyperlinked. It's only text here. Now, all the pressure right here is on the copywriter. The designer is not even involved, so the copy must be good if anything great is going to come from this format. Plain text emails are typically better for offers or brands that solve a specific pain point, and that's because it takes high-level, persuasive, engaging copy to get someone to buy something that solves a specific pain point for them. For example, a supplement brand is not going to get someone to buy the supplement because of a cool graphic of the bottle. They will, however, convert someone with high-level copy that explains why this supplement is valuable to solving their pain point. Next up, you got design emails. So this is going to be an email full of graphics and engaging visuals. It's much easier to write copy for a design email because all the pressure is on the designer to make it engaging enough to get people to convert. These types of emails are better for brands to sell things like t-shirts, watches, clothing, stuff like that. The reason being that these are visual products that don't solve a specific pain point. For example, Gymshark could probably write some great copy and it will not sell as well as a well-produced video of some yoked dude just rocking their clothes. And that just proves the point that visuals sell a product like clothing better than copy because that's the reason someone is buying it, the aesthetics. On the contrary, if the clothing were to have some crazy unique mechanism, like it has a built-in like air conditioning, like fabric system, whatever, I don't know how that would work, but then that's a scenario where copy would probably be a better way to sell it. Moving on to my favorite, plain text hybrid emails. So I have yet to actually hear anybody else call it this, so I like to think that I coined this phrase, but others are definitely using them. Plain text hybrid emails are essentially plain text emails with some type of graphic element incorporated into them. Now, the reason you would want to use an email like this is to essentially solve a specific pain point while making your idea resonate with someone better, or just to like keep them engaged and hit those dopamine receptors. The design element might be necessary to help portray a message that's being told in the copy, or it could just help provide enough dopamine to the reader, just help them keep reading on. The graphic element of this style of email could be a design header section, it could be a photo plugged into the middle of the copy, it could be a design CTA button, anything like that. One good example of this would be a product that helps with foot pain. So you might include a header section or an image in the middle of the copy that displays the area of the foot that the pain is coming from. That not only grabs attention, but it also gives someone just enough dopamine to continue reading. And just like in this document, the images keep you engaged with small little dopamine hits. All right, now there are two things you want to nail down before you write, and that is the product and the customer. Now the product details here is simply knowing your product that you're about to be writing copy for inside and out. You should understand how it works, the science behind it, why people have bought it before, the benefits it provides, the downsides, everything. And then the second part is your customer avatar. So our AI customer research SOP that I was talking about before takes care of this part for you. And all you'll need to do is essentially read 400 to 500 words and you'll know exactly who you are selling to and everything about them. The reason this part is so important is because the person you're selling to has certain fears, desires, habits that you need to understand in order to write effective copy that sells them. So know these two things, product and customer, like the back of your hand. You'll be able to write extremely effective copy no matter what. All right, next up, super important principle here is direct response versus branding. So as you can see here, you've got direct response on this circle, branding in this circle, and then in the middle you have branded direct response. Now, important caveat here. You do not need to choose one or the other for your brand. They can overlap in the middle, like I just told you about, into branded direct response. So first, let's define what direct response copy is. DR copy is designed specifically to invoke a direct response from the reader. So an example of this would be a headline that says, Japanese biochemist discovers 6-second appetizer that melts 53 pounds of fat away in under 2 weeks. This is an actual headline that I found. The direct response copywriter does not worry about building a close relationship with the reader and nurturing them for days, weeks, months, or years. They want the reader to say yes or no right now, or in other words, respond directly. This style of copy will naturally sound more salesy since it's created specifically to get the reader to respond to it right away. Next up, you got branded copy. So branded copy is designed to build a strong brand equity in the mind of the reader. An example of this would be a brand slogan like Built Ford Tough or Smile More. Another example would be a headline that says something like, You're a partner in all your vision needs. So all these slogans and headlines aren't really selling you hard, but they're there to give their brand a positive spot in your brain. They essentially want to build up strong brand equity in your brain, so when you need their product or service, you go to them since you trust and love the brand so much already. Now, as you can probably tell, an entire book could be written on direct response and branded copy, but this section just covers them in brief detail. Now, let's dive into branded direct response, which is where the two meet. So branded DR is where you toe the line between direct response and branded copy. And as I mentioned, you don't have to choose direct response or branding for your style of copywriting. They are simply on two separate ends of the spectrum. And when you hover in the middle, you're writing a style of copy called branded direct response. So this style of copy uses some direct response principles, but it still maintains the overall brand equity that we're looking for. It allows you to sell hard without stepping outside of the brand voice. So a good example of a branded direct response headline would be something like, Rid your foot of gout-related acids and walk freely again with our new supplement. So the honest truth and what I think is that the majority of brands would benefit from using some type of branded direct response copy. Because why wouldn't you want to sell as hard as you can without stepping out your actual brand identity? Especially in e-commerce nowadays, the most aggressive marketer wins. So I don't see a reason not to incorporate as much direct response as you possibly can. Now, if you think of your branding as the branding circle in the diagram that I showed you before, You might want to step as far to the edge of that circle as you possibly can in terms of the direct response style copy without actually leaving that circle or your brand's identity. And this is just something that comes with time, but the more you analyze different pieces of copy, the more you'll notice what style of writing they're using. All right, so that's it for copy. Now we're diving into email design. All right, so first I want to talk about how your email copywriting plays into the design. So the truth is, most of the results that your email marketing generates will typically come from the copywriting. However, email designs are very important for brands that sell a visual product or a product that doesn't solve a specific pain point like we've talked about. Like we talked about earlier, some examples of that might be clothing brands, jewelry brands, watch brands, you get the idea. However, designs are also important for maintaining brand equity, giving the brand a high quality look, and controlling how the reader digests the information that you are presenting to them. Now, let's cover the different aspects of a design email. So, this frame kind of shows you like the basic elements of a design email, but let's define each one. So some of these will be copywriting elements, but I'm not going to explain how to write the copy here since this whole training document part is about design. So the logo is obviously just the brand's logo, and it belongs at the very top of the email. Its purpose is simply just to clearly display the brand that the viewer is receiving this email from. Then you got a big bold headline that's attention grabbing text, usually at the very, very top of the email. Then you're going to have other copy like subheadlines and body copy. That copy has to be there, and then you're going to blend it into the design as seamlessly as you can. Then you have call to actions, so that's going to be an engaging button that they're going to click to get the next step of the funnel. And then you want to have very clean transitions, so it's a very visually pleasing way to move from section to section. Sometimes they won't really be there, but sometimes they can make an email look super clean. All right, specifically to dive into the header section or above the fold. So the above the fold section is what viewers see before they begin scrolling. The core offer of the email and the core message of the email should be right here. So it's very important that it's engaging and cleanly laid out. As an example, this image here is an above the fold section from a Dr. Squatch email. As you can see, it's very clean, very easy to digest, and it just looks nice. Now, getting into below the fold. So this section is what the viewer sees after they begin scrolling. Now, the entire point of the below the fold section is to help guide the reader through the copy and to the CTA button. Here's an example going back to that same Dr. Squatch email. You can see they have like nice visual things that break up the copy and just kind of like lead you towards that button. Now, this is something that varies a lot, but for the most part, an Ecom brand's design emails will be laid out like this. You'll have above the fold where you have the logo, headline, image, other copy, and call to action. And then you'll have the below the fold section with the sub headline, image, body copy, and call to action. Keep in mind, you're probably gonna have multiple buttons in different like places people can look at different pieces of content. All right, next we're going to talk about guiding the viewer's eyes. So this is a great image that came up on the internet a little while ago, and it kind of like shows where your eyes are going to go and then where to go next as you look at this image. And this picture by itself pretty much sums up this entire section. You can guide the reader through the copy based on the layout of your text. And this plays a really big factor in creating designs specifically so that they convert into buyers and don't just look pretty. We do not want to make the mistake of just throwing all the copy into an email design without any thought. We want to put a lot of thought into the placement of each block of copy and the size of it. All right, so important. This is an email design checklist. These are the things that you need to check off the list, so to say, in order for a design email to be ready to go. Everything here is important and it's all necessary. So if anything on this list does not meet satisfaction while reviewing a design email, then it should be edited further. Now, here's the list. Number 1 is the clean factor. This is potentially the most important part of the list, so the email should be very clean. And by clean, I mean it should be very pleasant to look at. If an email was messy, it would be hard to read, the images would be all jumbled up, etc. A clean email is very easy to digest and everything on it looks very nice. Going back to this example, this is a very clean email. All right, number 2 is an easy to read headline. So the headline of an email should be at the very top and it should be big and easy to read. It can blend in with an image, but it should be still very easy to read and should stand out. It's a very subtle thing, but it's very important. Number 3 is the imagery. So a design email should not be all text, obviously. There should be imagery, different blocks and sections, etc. to make the copy easier to read and make it presentable. Going back to this same Dr. Squatch email, this is an example of that right here. This little section kind of like breaks up the copy and makes it easier to read. If there's a bunch of copy on the email and very little design elements like images and sections to make the copy look good, then go back and edit it further. Number 4 is large buttons. So the whole point of an email is to get people to click on it and go to that website, or landing page. So our buttons should always be large and very easy to see or click on. Now, as for the style of the button, this should match what the brand has for buttons on their website, but you can also just get creative with it. All right, next up is good spacing. So the best emails have great spacing. This means that each element should have some space around it and everything looks natural. Now, this is very similar to the clean email principle from the first point on this list, but if things are crowded and it's really hard to digest or read the copy, the email will get a lot less engagement. Just make sure everything's laid out nicely with good spacing. We want to make sure that people can just open our email up and just very easily digest the content. You now have our complete email and SMS marketing system. If you go ahead and implement even just one section of what I reviewed here with you today, you will see a drastic improvement in your email and SMS revenue. Now, of course, implementing all this yourself means you'll need to master technical deliverability, create a bunch of compelling campaigns, design beautiful emails, manage the inner workings of complex flows, and just constantly test and optimize every aspect of it. But if you would rather have a team of email and SMS marketing experts handle this for you and get a bunch of results like these ones that we've gotten for our clients, and again, it's not only the case studies that you're seeing here, it's also the customer testimonials, the many videos we have of our clients just saying great things about us, and even these client interviews where we talked about exactly what we did to generate those results for them. So if you want a dedicated team to produce results like this and implement everything that I just went over in this training for your brand, you can click the top link in the description to book a free strategy call with me. On that call, we'll take a look at your exact current email setup and strategy, and then talk about how we can help you get results like these. Thanks for watching, and if you want more content like this, you can click the other link in the description to jump on my free newsletter. I send 3 to 5 times a week to that newsletter, bunch of content, value bombs like this. And let's keep scaling that e-commerce brand profitably. I'll see you in the next video.